A man is running from someone down the corridors of a modern building. After reaching the roof, he closes the door behind him with relief. He begins barricading it when his pursuer suddenly appears from the other side. He suggests continuing to humiliate and insult him as he usually does. After all, the man is his boss, Rudolph, who is obsessed with discipline and literally torments his subordinates for the slightest offense. And now Zhenya can settle the score by throwing him off the roof. Rudolph plummets downward, and Zhenya watches from above when another Rudolph appears beside him and immediately starts berating the guy. That one also goes flying down, where a couple of dozen identical virtual bodies are already lying. The adventure ends, Zhenya comes out of it, and immediately shudders at the voice of the real Rudolph. Their colleague Vika sticks up for her friend, but the boss is unyielding and announces disciplinary measures. Later, Vika scolds Zhenya, not understanding where the Kill Rudolph adventure came from, the one that everyone at work is playing. The guy admits that he developed it because there is no other way to relieve the stress of dealing with such a boss. The young people work at a company called New Life, which offers anyone the chance to experience any virtual adventure. Now everyone in the country can fly to the stars or dive into the depths of the ocean without risking their lives. However, real crime still exists in society, and policeman Mikhail has to take part in apprehending criminals, while special units head to the scene. He disperses the offenders and then rides his retro bike to see his brother, Yuri, who also works for the police but holds a higher position. The thing is, recently people have been making widespread complaints about the appearance of negative characters in their New Life adventures. Characters called glitches, which embody their complexes and fears, turning entertainment into a paranoid nightmare. Yuri believes that a secret organization of anti-verts who fight against dependence on virtual reality is behind this. Therefore, he wants to embed Mikhail in the corporation so he can investigate from the inside and find whoever is linked to the anti-verts. Mikhail heads to the office, noticing that all the express train passengers are immersed in adventures, while only one girl is reading a real book. He immediately recognizes Vika, the one Yuri had pointed out, since he suspects her of being involved with the anti-verts, as she has been calling for a return to real life with genuine emotions and experiences. Mikhail strikes up a conversation with Vika, telling her that he also prefers reading over virtual recreation. Vika warns him about making such bold statements, as he has just confessed he doesn't support the company's policy. Nonetheless, they continue talking because the operative's first task is to involve Vika in a shared adventure. Meanwhile, the corporation's management holds a meeting to discuss declining revenue, as people have begun to avoid adventures that frighten them with glitches. Rudolph is sure one of their colleagues is behind it, and after the meeting he returns to the hall and lashes out at everyone he encounters. Later, Mikhail admits to Vika that he suffers from glitch phobia, and under company policy, every employee must make 2 or 3 forays into virtual reality each day. He asks her to help him and go on an adventure together. After some persuading, she agrees, and while their colleagues test out various adventures, she and Mikhail find themselves in a boat in the middle of a lake. Vika admits she removed the fisherman because she was tired of people around her and wanted quiet. They discuss the merits of virtual reality compared to the real world, when Yuri appears, shouting at Mikhail to be the best at everything. But when he tries to remind him about the operative's assignment, Mikhail switches off the adventure, and they both return to the hall. The girl tries to comfort Mikhail, saying it's just a glitch of his subconscious and that his brother doesn't actually think such things. Vika wants to know what Yuri's assignment was, but Mikhail lies that his brother has been giving him random tasks since childhood, which he always carried out. Later, Yuri scolds him for almost wrecking the operation and orders him to strike any glitch that appears in front of him. Mikhail notices an extremely expensive watch on his brother's wrist, but Yuri advises him to work harder if he wants to get a bonus. Meanwhile, in one of the clubs, a member of the anti-verts group contacts Vika, who tells him about Mikhail, but they advise her not to be too quick to reveal everything. The girl is currently visiting a professor, the first man to start developing virtual adventures. He is disabled, and she helps him with household chores. At the same time, Yuri notices that Mikhail is not treating Vika like a subject of investigation. He advises him not to grow closer to her and to organize the next joint adventure as soon as possible. Later, Mikhail tells Vika that he loves music very much and used to attend concerts, but now people have stopped going to live performances. Vika agrees to go to a concert in a virtual adventure with him, but does not respond to his kiss, considering it too hasty. Later still, they find themselves in an adventure together, having a great time listening to Mikhail's favorite band. When a slow song begins, they dance and almost kiss, but a passerby bumps into them. Then Vika switches off all the other participants, leaving only herself and Mikhail. They kiss when Rudolph suddenly appears next to them. Remembering his brother's advice to strike at any glitch, Mikhail punches him, and Rudolph goes down. However, Mikhail's hand hurts as if he really hit something, which surprises Vika. They exit the adventure, realizing it wasn't a glitch. The couple hurries to the boss's office, but it's late, and the only people in the building are security guards who tell them to leave. Nevertheless, the two enter the elevator. Upon entering Rudolph's office, they immediately understand that he's dead. Vika can't fathom how it could have happened or why the protective system didn't work. Just then, a worried security guard knocks on the door. Rudolph, of course, doesn't respond, and the guard warns them that he's about to activate the lock and come inside. They enter the elevator, but as soon as the guard finds the body, he locks the elevator. By then, Mikhail and Vika have already climbed out into the elevator shaft. The building's alarm system is triggered. Mikhail manages to pry open the doors and pull Vika into the hallway. Hearing that all exits are sealed, they run to the roof. They have to leap to the neighboring building's rooftop, and Vika nearly falls. She hangs on the edge, but Mikhail pulls her up, and they escape. Vika takes Mikhail to the professor and asks for help. After hearing what happened, he realizes Rudolph had been in his own adventure, but someone managed to sync it with the couple's adventure, and Rudolph ended up in the club with them. That same person disabled the safety protocols. Vika begs for his help, but the professor reminds them that no one has ever tested transferring someone's consciousness before. After much persuasion, the professor agrees to transfer Mikhail's consciousness into Rudolph's body. They agree that when the boss wakes up, he'll go to Rudolph's home, then return to his own body, leaving the dead man in his bed. That way, no one will connect Rudolph's death with Mikhail and Vika's visit. Meanwhile, at the office, the management is trying to figure out what happened and who killed Rudolph. A detective arrives and starts interviewing witnesses. Mikhail, for his part, is stunned by the professor's discovery because it's basically immortality. Meanwhile, the detective believes Rudolph died from cardiac arrest, which could have been caused by a severe blow. Mikhail suddenly realizes that Rudolph was killed by his own hands, so there must be someone who devised the plan and set him up. He recalls Yuri's advice to strike a glitch. He asks the professor how long he can stay in Rudolph's body. The professor urges him to hurry because after 18 hours, his consciousness will be fully integrated into the new body. The professor begins the transfer. Rudolph comes too, scaring the orderlies and co-workers. At the same time, Yuri tries to reach his brother, but his chip is inactive. Meanwhile, Mikhail as Rudolph tries to determine if the boss had dealings with Yuri. However, the secretary says she never saw him at the corporation's office, nor noticed any strange calls or visitors. Conflicts with subordinates were a regular thing. He then goes down to the main hall and, pulling Genya out of an adventure, summons him to his office, ordering him to collect information on Yuri. Meanwhile, he speaks with the detective, who tells him about the strange resurrection of Rudolph. In the morning, Vika runs into Rudolph's office because Mikhail still hasn't returned to his own body. Mikhail as Rudolph explains that the murder wasn't accidental and that he must get to the truth. Vika goes to her desk, but she's called in to see an agent from the virtual police, who turns out to be Yuri, asking where Mikhail has disappeared to. Mikhail, on the other hand, discovers a new project in Rudolph's computer and realizes that if launched, humanity will have no way to avoid universal virtualization. Suddenly, Vika bursts into his office, unwilling to listen to anything, and accuses Mikhail of lying. Her brother told her everything about his mission. She despises him because now she knows why he started wooing her. The girl flees, but Mikhail as Rudolph catches up to her in the street to explain. He admits the mission was real, but he didn't realize he would fall in love with her. He's ready to give the anti-verts the data he's found. In fact, there's no need to introduce him to anyone. Vika herself can pass it on. At that moment, the professor contacts them, stating he won't take any responsibility for Mikhail's life. Later, Mikhail meets with Zhenya, who has discovered that Yuri has 3 accounts that received large sums of money on a regular basis. The latest was 2 days ago. Meanwhile, Yuri recalls how a masked figure contacted him, ordering Rudolph's murder in the adventure. Yuri laughed because everyone knows adventures are harmless, but the masked figure explained that he had to strike as if he could really kill, and then transferred the money. Just then, Vika calls Mikhail as Rudolph, begging him for help. He rushes to the place she indicates. It turns out that she and the professor decided to return Mikhail to his real body against his will. Rudolph shuts down, and Mikhail regains consciousness in himself. He thanks the professor and goes home, where Yuri soon shows up. Yuri blames him because he became a murderer on his account. He tells Mikhail everything he knows about the masked figure, which isn't much, and asks for forgiveness. Mikhail, however, sends him away. Meanwhile, the anti-verts, having gotten the data from Rudolph's computer, decide to upload it online to alert the world to the threat. They also reveal to Vika that it's the professor who's been releasing the glitches. Vika goes to the corporation where Mikhail meets her. Their conversation is cut short by the appearance of Rudolph. He walks through the hall, shocking Vika and Mikhail, then goes to the corporate meeting. He harshly reminds everyone that he owns 33% of the shares, so once he launches his new project, he will reign supreme over the company. At the same time, a special police unit bursts into the anti-Virts club and arrests all the activists, as reported by the news. New Life announces that it's increasing its capacity, and since keeping pets is banned, they expand adventures involving animals. It's also reported that the professor was found in his apartment in a coma and taken to the hospital. Mikhail realizes who the mysterious masked figure was, the one who devised and brilliantly carried out the plan. Later, Zhenya tries to comfort Vika by saying that the anti-Virts didn't name her. Mikhail comes to them and announces that Rudolph is now the CEO of the company. However, no one knows that the professor is actually hiding behind his appearance. Sometime later, Mikhail enters Rudolph's office and knocks him out with a single blow. Rudolph's consciousness, ends up in an adventure surrounded by clowns, which the professor has feared ever since he ran away from a street performer, got hit by a car, and became disabled. A swarm of clowns demands he confess his crime. Unable to bear it, he admits his guilt. Instantly, a group of people dressed in circus costumes appears around him, with Mikhail among them. But Professor S. Rudolph suddenly starts laughing because he got rid of that fear long ago. And even if he confesses, Mikhail can't prove anything since they are in an adventure. However, Mikhail tells him to look more closely, and Rudolph realizes that beneath the clown makeup are his co-workers and the detective, who is pleased by his confession, and it's all one shared adventure. Professor S. Rudolph regains consciousness a minute before Mikhail does, hits him on the head, and flees. They try to track him down, but Rudolph has disabled his chip, and all the funds have been withdrawn from his accounts. Mikhail goes to see Zhenya, who immerses the guards in a cutting-edge adventure and announces that the dangerous criminal is wanted. Mikhail heads up to the server room and destroys it with gunshots. Immediately, the adventures stop being broadcast, and everyone returns to reality, beginning to regain their senses. They immediately notice Rudolph, whose image is everywhere now, labeled a dangerous criminal. Perceiving the message, Mikhail rushes to the specified location. Soon he sees Professor as Rudolph running and tackles him, just as the operative squad, led by Yuri, arrives. Later, the detective interrogates the professor, accusing him of murder. However, that same evening, the professor received an offer he could not refuse. He handed over the consciousness transfer technology, and all charges were dropped. He returned to his own body, and although he now works under supervision, he still retains his knowledge, so there's a chance he'll strike again in the future. Rudolph's body was also saved, and the seeds of consciousness planted there are rapidly developing. The anti-Virts received suspended sentences and continued their fight against virtual adventures. Yuri was charged with corruption and arrested, and Mikhail and Vika went on a real adventure where there were fishermen and thrill-seekers on speedboats out on the lake. But they were happy. Overall, the film tries to be cyberpunk and dystopian, but it doesn't succeed. As a thriller, it's very weak, with no tension. As science fiction, it also falls short. Essentially, it's just a visually pretty movie with no real ideas or innovations. A flick for one evening.